e5 and go into the Vienna game, but I'm going to play d5. I think that's safe and sound. After e5, I play d4. Okay, so this is going to let me trade queens and stop him from castling or win a pawn. So d3 was a little passive. And now he has two legal moves. If he takes with the king, he can't castle. If he takes with the knight, he loses his e4 pawn. Okay, so he's giving up a pawn. So that wasn't necessarily the best choice to just give up a pawn like that. Okay, so white has undeveloped his knight. Now where to put this? I could put it on c5 and threaten to mess up the pawn structure. Or I could put it on d6 and the knight and bishop neutralize each other. I could put it back on f6, but that doesn't make sense. I'm going to opt to go to c5 just to try to mess up his pawn structure. So now that's what I succeeded in doing, and for what it's worth, I even have the bishop pair out of it. Okay, so now, basically, strategically, black has a winning game. The question is how to go about doing it. I'm going to play bishop to f5 because it develops a piece and attacks his isolated pawn on d3. So he may play d4 here. That's what he did. Now I play e6, and I'm ready to develop my other bishop. Now if he plays knight h4, that's okay, because I'll just retreat bishop g6. So now strategically I want to blockade his d4 pawn. So to do that I would need to get my knight to d5, but that's going to take 3 moves. So what I'll do here is I'll just develop, well, let's see, let me think about this a second. I'll develop the bishop to e7 and closing off the e file, and if he plays bishop f4 I can always play c6, and that does restrain the d4 pawn. So here, I'm just going to, my next 4 moves might be something like c6, castles kingside, knight d7, knight b6. Okay, so now he does want to tickle my bishop, so I'll just I have a light squared bishop, he doesn't. I could put it on d3, but that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Although it does give the bishop an extra diagonal to work on. Now let's see. I think next I should play knight d7. Now he could play knight e5, but I don't mind that so much. Again, if he wants to trade off my bishop, that's fine. If he doesn't, I'll be able to use it because he doesn't have a light squared bishop. Okay, so what's he doing with knight g4? Well, he's opening up the diagonal for his bishop. He's piling up on e5. I don't mind trades, so I'll just play knight b7. Okay, so this kind of goes along the line with what I was thinking about. Now I've restrained his d4 pawn. So I may be playing knight b6 and knight d5 here. Okay, so I don't know, the bishop on e5 seems misplaced. Now I can get the bishop pair against 2 knights if I take it, but I don't see a reason to take it. Now he's attacking G7, I think. Just casting is logical. And it's humorous as if I didn't have my G7 pawn, knight H6 would be mate. Yeah, like I said, I'm just planning to put my rooks on the D file and transfer my knight to D5. Now I have essentially no weaknesses in my position. He has two, he's down a pawn, and he has an isolated queen pawn. Now, if he loses that isolated queen pawn, he's down 2 pawns. So the better move to learn from White's perspective is on move on move 2 is just push the pawn and then learn the variations. Knight D5, White can play knight F3, White can play D4, White can play C4. Those are all playable lines, and even knight C3 is possible on the third move. These give White better chances than this. The best he had was equality. White can try to preserve the advantage of the first move with one of those other ones. Okay, so back to the current position. So in theory, one of the hardest things to do in chess is to win a one game. That's what right now strategically Black enjoys, simply because Black is ahead, and Black also has a weak queen for d4. Okay, so let's see what's he doing. Let's see. One, we're taking it's one of the ideas when you have the isolated queen pawn is to occupy the E and the C files with a rook. The drawback, of course, being that he is down a pawn. A lot of these positions happen when Black is missing one of these pawns, a material that's even, and his D5 push costs him a pawn. He might try to prepare B4, B5, but that's going to take 3 moves or more, because how does he get the pawn to B4? Okay, so it looks like what he's trying to do is either pin my knight against my pawn or double rooks. So if I do play knight D4 here, he might play rook B3. And one move I could consider here is bishop H5. The point being, if the knight comes back to E3, I can swap and double up his pawns. So let me think this over here. So if I play knight D5 directly, rook B3, I'm going to play B5. See, knight D5, rook B3, B5. Now you can play rook C1. You can play rook C8. If it shows the D8, I mean rook C8. So there's no sense in weakening C6 here. Of course, your idea here is to Here the arrows. Play h5. It gives some loof to my king. Forces his knight back to e3. Of course, another idea here is to put the bishop on e4 and use it to blockade on d5. He'll keep his rook out of b3 and menace a3. So, I'm going to try that. And as I say, humorous would be if I then played g6 and got myself checkmated. Don't plan on doing that. And here, maybe h5 could be a idea of answer knight e3 with bishop takes. Well, I have to spend the tempo. Well, I'm going to take it. I'm going to do this just to cripple his pawns. Okay. Now we'll transfer the rook to d8, bishop c7, rook d7, bishop takes, pawn takes. There's nothing to fear here. Okay, so white's down a pawn and has 4 weak pawns. It's the kind of structure to avoid, if possible, to get, even if white had an extra pawn, or had, one less pawn, say my e6 and or my c6 pawn are missing. This is not an ideal pawn structure for white. Now maybe the knight here makes a little more sense, because in the light of an exchange, I can take back with the rook, and I have a defense on d7 if need be. We can go to d7 and guard b7 should he be attacking. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play knight d5 because it does attack his rook. Now, which way to take back? I'm going to take back with the rook and keep d4 under surveillance. I have no weaknesses in my position whatsoever. And rook b3 is met with rook d7. Maybe at some point I can play f6 and start centralizing my king and get an e5 break in. Okay, so he does. Well, that just was a blunder. I'm just able to win some material here. This will put me up the exchange. He walked into. Is that a pin or a skewer? Or both? Kind of interesting when the pin, you're attacking the more valuable or the least valuable piece, and the more valuable piece is behind it. And with a skewer, you're attacking the more valuable piece with the least valuable behind it. But here they're both of equal value. Okay, so now he's trying to get c4 in, and I like my rook there, so now I play a positional b5, and the weakness on c6 really means nothing. So this move b5 is designed to attempt to throttle white in his position. Okay, so now he's got a threat. I can play rook takes, pawn takes. Now I'm giving back material. Um, generally speaking, it's not wise to give back material, although it does win. So let's, before I make a move here, and I got time on the clock, I try to offer an explanation. Strategically, for black to win this, it's a matter of finding a way to trade the rooks. Then black wins the endgame up in exchange. And then at some point, maybe black might even win by giving up the exchange, transposing into a winning king and pawn ending. Sometimes use the rook as an extra piece to or a more powerful piece to get some kind of concession from white. Now, f6 just drops a pawn. Now g6 does weaken my king position. There's not much you can do about it. And g6 keeps the extra material. So I could play rook takes, pawn takes, and then rook d8. And, now black is threatening to play rook d3, forking some pawns. But, and white doesn't really have a good reply to that. He could play king g2 and answer rook d3 with c4. White starts getting rid of his weak pawns. So the logical move here is just g6 and play on with the extra exchange. Now you can park that bishop on f6, but I don't think you can keep it there. Okay, so now a3. So here I'll double rooks. And now he does have to worry about, me taking and dropping the rook here. Because, both, all these pawns are going to be vulnerable. And, for my rook to be, my extra exchange to be effective, I need open files. And, I'm occupying the only open file there is. So, f4. Okay, so now, what I want to do is improve the position of my king. Now, f5 doesn't really do it. It creates a target down here on h7. However, h5 makes a certain amount of sense. But it does drive his rook back to g3 where it gets back into play. So what I'm thinking of doing, let's see, how to, like I say, I have the extra exchange, I need to convert it, and I can take the bishop, but that gives white some glimmer of hope. There's no need to get back the exchange at this point. So I'm thinking of putting the pawn up on a4, and the idea behind that is anchor that pawn down on a3 where it can't go anywhere, it remains a target. Then I can consider moves like c5, trying to open up lines for my rooks. Of course, it weakens b5, but how does he get at it? He's a long way off, so I'm just going to bide my time with a4. Okay, I was wondering about him going there. Okay, so I think what I need to do here is just keep my back rank safe. I could play rook d7, and he can't really come in, but I'll just put this rook on c8. That way it's safe, and the the c5 break may be exactly what the doctor ordered. See, his bishop has, right now, the way its position is set up currently, his bishop has one target, and that's the pawn on a5. Everything else is on a light square. Now, I do have a serious dark square weakness, but my rook on c8 will keep my back rank safe for now. And, he lacks any kind of way to get his rook into the game. So, I'm not going to rush with h5 to drive us back to g3. So now I'm going to play c5. I'm trying to open up lines. Now the idea is to eventually get a rook to c4. Or maybe he'll get over to a4. And again, as long as I keep a rook on the back rank, my king is safe. But here, like I say, I need to increase the scope of my rooks. Okay, so now I have some interesting choices here. I can push. Well, I actually like pushing here because then maybe I can get the b4 break in and try to undermine and get a pass pawn rolling. So this also limits his rook on g3. If he wants to attack b5, he's got to play rook e3 to e2 to b2. And by the time he gets that done, my rook is still, my rook on b5 is still protecting my b4 pawn. But here, I'm going to play b4. I'm willing to give up a pawn to spring my c4 pawn loose. This way I can utilize the value of this rook on c8 to support that pawn for advancement. So, a temporary pawn sacrifice is well worth it. So he can't afford to take on with a c pawn. It just springs this guy loose. So he almost has to let the c pawn sit. He may or may not take first. But, then I'm threatening to push the pawn to b3. Okay, so he pushed by. Now I'll push by. That does fix a weakness for me on a5, but let's see. If I play b3, he has to play rook e3. Then if I play b2, he has to play rook e1. Now I can't go behind my pawn. So let's see. So I can't play rook b5 or rook b8. So I want to play a wait. No, I don't want to. Well, I don't want to take this. Just in principle, I don't want to take this rook off the back rank. I just don't want to have to somehow find myself defending against a back rank mate. So I'm just going to play b3 and sit on this position. Okay, because I can always bring this rook back to d7 and then put it on b2. Okay, so let's put it on d7 now. Now the idea is to push and go behind it. Okay, so now just rook b2. Rook b7, okay. Alright, so we found the defense to stop my pawn from queening. Next step here is so I can play b3 and rook b3. back rank is safe, so I'm going to stop and play rook c6 here. The idea is eventual doubling, push the pawn, and then bring the rook into here to threaten to go this way or that way with the rook and down here. So, he's to counter this, he has to find a way to get this in play. And it might entail having to sacrifice a pawn, which he really can't afford to do, but he might have to. Or to try to get this king over to help out. They played there. So as long as I don't let him down my throat, let's see, b7, king over to f1, rook b6, king to e1, rook b3, king to d2. He gets a defense just in time. So here's a situation where I can just try to improve the position of my pieces. They're doing fine. I want to get this king up to d5. So I'm just going to wait. I'll play a waiting game here. Try to make my position a little stronger. His pieces are tied down, stopping my threats. Okay, he's after that. That was his idea. Well, we can let him have it, because that opens up a file for me. After he takes it, he has no more targets. And then that'll open up the A file for me. Now, question which rook. Let's see. Rook A6, bishop back, rook takes, rook A7, rook A7, bishop back, rook takes. This is the proper rook, I believe. Okay, rook A6. Okay, now rook takes. Now I control an open file. And the back rank checkmate threats that he might entertain are gone. I'm also threatening to play rook takes bishop here. Pawn takes, rook takes, and those pawns are just very, very deadly. He almost may have no defense against them. King E1. Yeah, okay, so now giving back the exchange makes sense, because I'm just going to transpose into a simple winning rook and pawn ending. Now he has no defense to c3. And, black has 2 pawn islands, white has 3. All white's pawns are isolated, 2 of them are doubled. And c3 is deadly. Our 2 pawns on the 6 beat a rook by themselves. And unsupported by a rook. So, he can't stop me from forcing the queen through here. I attack it again. I could have played b2 followed by c2. But this works, because if he takes the pawn, then I just promote to a queen. And he's losing his rook. It'll just be a simple matter of negotiating a checkmate. Okay, so I'll try to get the quickest mate I can. Okay, that doesn't bother me. Let's give him a check, because I can. And try to force him one way or the other into a mating net. If king f1, rook b1 is mate right away. Okay, that weakens his second rank. So let's see. Let's just take the f pawn, and now the threat is check and mate. So here comes the check, and then pre-move this one after he goes back. That will be mate. Okay, so good game. Too bad you dropped the pawn. Start another rematch.